let's get right back into it. Thank you everybody for coming back. Let's take a look at the list of items needed to produce this figure. You need the Dawnbreaker, Batman Beyond, My Hero Academia, and of course a custom head purchased on eBay and some custom sculpt to the decor. Y para los que entienden mejor español, esta es la lista de artículos que necesitamos para poder lograr esta figura. La pieza de Dawnbreaker, el Batman Beyond, una pieza de My Hero Academia para las manos y un rostro custom que conseguimos en eBay y claramente los detalles con apoxie para la armadura. This video will focus on the technique of applying that design to the actual suit, or the armor if you want to call it that, and that's going to be using apoxie. It's a technique that I wish somebody would have taught me when I started out, and unfortunately sometimes we don't have that correct tutorial or detail at the time that we are needing it. So hopefully this comes just in time for you to apply in using for your action figure customizing. There's one of those details that I will focus on here, and of course I will not take you through the entire process because sanding and painting, well, that's pretty much something that all of us know how to do. Whether it's brushing or airbrushing, that's really not that much more difficult. What's really interesting is some of those details. How did somebody achieve those? Well, this video will focus on showing exactly how the design was achieved on this particular figure. Let's get started. One of the key important things on any figure is choosing the correct head sculpt or portrait. And once you've chosen it, then you paint it as correctly as possible to what you want to see. And actually, this is only airbrushed with the primer and then the actual reddish skin tone. All of the other details are hand painted to blank that was purchased on eBay and then hand painted to be as clean as possible to get the effect that was needed for this actual figure. The suit details are what make the character who it is. We're going to make him out of epoxy. I wish somebody had shown this to me in the beginning, but I will now share with you what I came across in my customizing. The best way to do this is to make an applique out of the design using epoxy or any other medium that you may be using. You can design it on paper and transfer it over. Best thing to do is to transfer it onto a piece of masking tape or a frisket if you are an airbrusher. Trace out your design in a permanent marker so that you can easily see the design that you are now going to cut. So you're going to take a sharp, brand new X-Acto blade and cut away on those same lines that you just drew. The best way to do so, if you've got a straight edge, is definitely use it. If it's an edge that's curved and you've got a curved ruler or a ruler you can curve, fantastic. If not, you'll have to freehand it. But the best thing to do is to cut out your design and then transfer it over to a ziplock bag that you're going to cut in half and leave one side attached to make it into a flap. Attach it to one side, flip it over, and fill in the design with epoxy or your desired putty that you use, and then cover it with the other half of the plastic. Flatten it out to make it an applique. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Determine ahead of time exactly where this applique or transfer is going to go. In this case, it's going on the chest, so having a three-dimensional look is going to look really awesome. If it were going in anywhere where there's any joints, it could cause paint rub, so we can go thinner with how much pressure we're applying to make it that much thinner. So as you can see here, I'm applying pressure using a pencil box. Well, you can use anything else that you have. You can use your hands or something like the pencil box to make sure it's flat. Then the trick is to come back with that straight edge, in this case a ruler. You can use an old credit card or whatever else you have. Take that brand new X-Acto blade and cut alongside that design, cutting through both sheets of plastic, cutting out your transfer. And let me show you what this looks like. So as you can tell, it is so much easier to transfer a fully cut design as a tampo or a template directly onto the figure instead of cutting it on the figure itself and then possibly damaging the plastic underneath and then not even having even surfaces. This way, if there's any imperfections like we see here, we can take those out using a little dab of water and going over the putty until those defects diminish. And in any case, while it's still soft, we can cut away any straight edges that we need. And as you can see here on the abs, the application turned out really, really clean. Very minimal work, which means less sanding to do. We still do have to do some sanding, but there's less to do now because we actually made a clean transfer. Now, if you find that you didn't do so very well on the first attempt, don't be afraid to do it again. You can still reuse that same putty, clean the surface on the figure, and start over. And all you need is water to clean that surface. Now, be careful that you don't scratch the surface with any other object. Only use water to clean it off. Now, you have about 30 minutes before that epoxy begins to set and becomes unmalleable. So within that time frame, you should be able to recut another template and reapply it in the surface that you need. You'll have to allow it to fully dry before going to the other side. And when I mean fully dry, I mean waiting at least 4 hours for it to actually be in a state to be handled by sandpaper, because you still need to sand. And when you do sand, I recommend you wet sand. So regardless of the grit that you want to use water, because it'll take that same dust or grit and put it back into the sanding and give you a finer finish. It'll give you a very polished look. And once you use that very fine sandpaper, same way, wet sanding, it'll give you a very, very clean surface for the paint to adhere to. Of course, the primer and the paint. Now, just remember, dry time is key before you handle the figure. So you may want to have a different project going at the same time, or work on a different part of the figure. If you have other areas that need this application, in this case the arms, great, or the boots and the gauntlets, that's another thing to focus on while this part of the chest plate ends up drying. Let me show you what it looks like completed. And this is what wet sanding does for you once you have that fine grit sandpaper. It polishes it out. It makes it look like it's factory direct. It makes it that much easier for you to apply your paint job. In this case, I did use an airbrush. I did primer it, and then I used this yellow. And it was so much easier to paint than to sculpt and then mask and paint it, just so much quicker. Now, we can actually apply the black paint to the areas and create the rest of the design. Decals are so important to your finished work because it makes it look that much cleaner. So if you can purchase this off of eBay, fantastic. If you can print it out yourself, even better. And once you've got it done, you can clear coat the figure in the finishes you need. I used matte clear coat for the body, and I used a glossy coat for the actual yellow armor, Tamiya X22. So let's go over the list one more time. We have a Dawnbreaker from the 2-pack. We have a Batman Beyond. We also have the hands for My Hero Academia and a custom head purchased on eBay. And of course, some custom sculpting with the apoxie. You just saw how to do that. Para los que no entienden el inglés, aquí está la lista nuevamente para ustedes. Este es la figura que se usó, el Dawnbreaker, la figura también de Batman Beyond y las manos de My Hero Academia y con una cara o un rostro que conseguimos en eBay que pintamos y los detalles con apoxie que acaban de mirarlo. Sobre todo, vamos a ver el costo. So let's take a look at the cost of producing such a figure. We always overlook such a thing, and people that are not customizers don't understand. This took 3 figures at $60. The custom head is $45 painted. Sculpting on the body was another $125. So there's your cost to produce this one figure if somebody wants you to do this for them. Meantime, I'll leave you with the rest of these video clips for this project. And in the meantime, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and don't forget to keep customizing those figures.